This is what we're making today. It's delicious. Tart, sweet, plenty of pastry, and a bourbon cream topping. Oh, yeah. We have entered that season that folks call the holiday season. And there's a lot of baking going on. And I was thinking, what do I want to do this year? I wanted something humble, not too expensive, very basic. I thought, how about a nice hot apple pie? That was the first thing I was going to go for. But then I thought, I remember a dessert that I used to love. And it is something I like a little better than apple pie for one good reason. My favorite part of eating an apple pie is when I get to that edge crust. You get the little bit of extra crust in each bite with the apple. It's fantastic. Well, that's the neat thing about a hot apple dumpling. You get that edge crust in every single bite. It's great. And another thing, we make a special syrup that goes over the top. It's kind of sweet and tangy, and it really just pops with a fantastic, already tangy Granny Smith. Beautiful apples. You can use any kind of apple you want for this recipe. This is a very flexible recipe. What we're going to do today is we're going to make a wonderful crust that goes over the outside of this after we core it, half it, and prep it with a little bit of spice. This is delicious, and you're going to love this recipe, and it's perfect for the holidays. So come over this way. We're going to look at these recipe ingredients and get started making hot apple dumplings. Oh, this is so good. Come on. The ingredients that we're using today on this fantastic recipe, well, right over here, starts with our apple. That's the star of the dish, and I'm going to be using Granny Smith apples on this one. Granny Smiths are nice and tart. However, it needs to be said, this dish can be made with any kind of apple that you happen to have. We're going to dust our apples once we peel them with some allspice and salt. And then in the middle of each half, we're going to use a little pat of butter. For our crust, we're going to be using some flour, salt, lard, butter, and a little bit of milk. And if you wish, you can substitute cream or half and half for that milk. It's going to react a little bit different, but not a lot when it comes to making your crust. Our toppings that we're going to be using right back here starts with 1 quart of apple juice. Now that apple juice, we're going to take it and cook it down, or simply reduce it until we have 1 cup. Over here, we're going to use 1.5 cups of cream with this sugar, and I'm going to combine it with just a little bit of bourbon, and I'm going to make what's called a bourbon cream. And it is fantastic when you combine it with this beautiful apple dish. If you don't wish to use bourbon or you like something different, vanilla will work. All right, so here we have all of these goodies. Let's get busy making hot apple dumplings. Before I start cutting these apples and getting them ready, let me explain a couple of things. You're going to need a knife to cut them in half. Make sure it's good and sharp. Apples are fairly firm, especially fresh ones. And if you're cutting through something and your knife isn't sharp, you can hurt yourself because the knife can, go ballistic. Now, next thing you want to know is paring these down. When it comes to removing the skin, you can use a peeler like this. That'll take the skin off real nice. You can use a paring knife. This is a paring knife right here. Or you can use what is referred to as a peeler, and this is a peeling knife. More commonly used in the commercial industry, but they're designed to fit the shape of the food a little bit better and to make peeling a little bit easier than your typical paring knife makes it. All right, so you got a couple of ways of doing that, and when we get down to coring these out, you can use something like I'm going to use. A spoon can be used, or this right here is a disher. Some people call it a scoop. Okay. Also, you could use a melon baller to clean out the core. And if you don't have any of the above, your paring knife or other small knife will work nice for cutting that out. And I'm going to show you on this show today how to use what's called a peeling knife. They're not really that common, but I think it's a really cool item, and I think everybody should know how to use this simple little item. Okay, first thing we've done is gone ahead and halved our apple. And I can take this peeler very simply, and I can work it down each side. Isn't that nice? And the nice thing about a peeling knife, when you get good at this, if you'll notice, there's almost no apple meat on that at all. Okay, and that's the advantage of using a knife like this and getting good at using them. They will take off less of the meat than your typical vegetable and fruit peeler. Okay, you just have to remember, don't get in too much of a rush. Don't try to take off too wide of a stroke at once, because the wider that piece is, the deeper the flesh is on the back side. All right, just that simple. And once we get to that end, we're just going to make a simple hollow cut like this. There we go. And same thing on the other side. Now I've gotten down to my core. Got the peel off of there. It's out of the way. There we go. And as I mentioned, I'm going to use just a very simple disher like this. Now when you're doing this, you're going to see the core. There's a little ring right here. That is where the tougher meat on the inside, the more fibrous meat begins. So just cut that out. And I simply take my time when doing this, and I'll get a nice, even, smooth, hollow area just like that. Now where you have the, where the stem was, or the bottom of the apple, you can simply cut those out with that also. Okay, that is exactly what we're looking for right here. This is the character that's going to give us a wonderful apple dumpling. Okay, just do them all the same way, okay? Okay, I have finished prepping these. Look at that. On the same board that I went ahead and cut these on, I'm going to season them out. And sometimes you're going to see a little oxidizing like this. Folks, don't let that worry you. You're about to bake this sucker in an oven, and it isn't going to matter if you have a little bit of brown going on that. All right, so don't worry about that at all. What we need to worry about is getting some spice on there. A little bit of salt, lightly, not heavy, light. Okay, over the top of that, we're going to dust on some allspice. And again, we aren't going to get crazy with this. We just want a gentle coating, a light spice underneath the flavor of the apple to make people wonder, gee, what is that? It's not quite cinnamon. What could it be? And there you have it. That is ready to be turned over. I'm going to do it the exact same way on the other side. Let's go ahead, get this poured off into a saucepan. Now this is our apple juice. And we're going to take this, and we'll put it over a medium heat. We'll bring it up until it starts to simmer. When it does, I'll reduce it to a medium low or low, and I'll allow it to sit there and keep simmering. I'll keep it uncovered. The whole idea here, we're going to cook the water out of this, and we're just going to have an apple concentrate left over. So we're going to go from 1 quart to 1 cup, let it keep cooking until it's done. This takes about 30 to 40 minutes, depending on how fast you're cooking it, usually, and then the altitude, and a few other factors. Don't sweat it, just keep cooking it until you got a cup. Right now, I'm getting ready to make the pastry. Now, a couple of things that you need to know. I went ahead and kept my fat in the refrigerator, my butter and this lard. And I did that because the colder it is, generally the better this works. And there's a reason. Let me get my salt in here. There we go. Just kind of stir that in gently. The reason that you want to have cold fat, the lard, the butter, you want to be able to take a pastry blender, an item like this, and cut that fat into smaller pieces. Now, I've already done that here with the butter. I made slices, but I want smaller pieces than that. I want pieces about the size of a pea. And, well, that's kind of common. What you'll see in a lot of recipes for doing pie crust. Now, if you push through that butter and you have to push hard on your pastry blender and on that fat, then guess what? It's just right. That's just the way you want it. You want to have to push hard to get those little bits. And just keep doing that until you have nothing but little tiny bits of fat in your flour. Okay? That's what I want to do right here. Now this can be somewhat messy. Don't worry about that. If you kick a little out of the bowl, it happens. Okay? It's just part of making pastry. And on the board down here, we're going to be rolling out our pastry anyway. So if flour hits that, just not an issue. Now when it comes to the milk, we don't add all of the milk at once. Let me tell you a whole idea here. When it comes to a pastry dough or a pie crust like this, the idea is you want little layers of fat in between little layers of flour that fry as it cooks. And that way it forms this kind of a flaky quality to it. Not unlike a puff pastry works, but that's where they take butter and fold it in between layers of a dough. In this case, we're making the dough on the outside of bits of butter. Works a little different but gives a similar and unique kind of effect. It doesn't puff, but it is light and flaky. If we use too much milk or water, then we end up activating too much gluten, and this goes from being flaky to more of a stiff, hard crust. Now, I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm simply saying that you have two different qualities that can be achieved right there. All right? So if you notice how I'll just occasionally use my finger, clear off my pastry blender, because your fats will stick there, just knock those off. So see here, we're coming out with little bitty bits of fat and flour. And that's perfect. That's what I'm wanting right there. And as I said, we only want to use as much of the milk as necessary to get this to stick together, no more. The idea there is it doesn't take a lot of activated gluten to make a dough tough. And that's what we use this for, is to literally activate some of that gluten in the dough. So there's about 1/4 of a cup. I'm going to start with that, and I'm just going to stir using the pastry blender. See there? Gently stirring. See how it's starting to come together already? Look at that. You know, this is a good quality right here. If I want to take this and make a nice little dough with it, or a pie crust with that, that's perfect. Look at that. See how it's breaking apart, but it's kind of wanting to stick together? Boom. This is the quality of qualities right there for the best, flakiest crust. Now, if you get this quality and it's not working for you, you just can't get it to work out, add a little bit more milk. You can do that, and it'll make it a little bit stickier, more dough-like. It'll stick together better, but you're going to lose some of that flaky quality. Do not use your hands very much on this. You can squeeze it together a little bit, but for the most part, keep your hands off of this dough. The heat from your hands will overheat the dough, and you'll end up with something less desirable. All right, boom. I'm finished. There's our dough. It's ready to go. We have that all made. I'm going to go ahead, and this is just going to be approximate. I'm going to quarter my dough. Okay, very easy. And there's going to be a little leftover dough on each one, so these don't have to be perfect. Right, now, whenever we're working a pastry dough, plenty of flour, both on your hands as well as on the dough. This dough has a lot of butter in it, a lot of fat in it, okay? So it's going to have a tendency to be somewhat sticky, okay? And I don't mean like, you know, typical wet dough sticky. I mean fat sticky, butter sticky, okay? So, kind of common. Now, if you'll notice, what am I doing here with my hands? I'm pushing this thing out. I'm showing you, you don't have to have a rolling pin to pull this off. Look at what I've done. All I have to do is just finish doing that, and I will have my pastry ready to go. Now, it is helpful to have something to scrape up a pastry with. This is called a pastry knife. Go figure, right? It's a nice thing to work breads and pastries with. Not essential, but nice. Put a little more flour there, flip this over. This is where they kind of really get tender on you. Okay, when we get down under 1/4 of an inch, it starts to get really iffy at that point. Okay, don't be afraid of it. Now this time I'm going to use a roller. And think about other long cylinder shaped items that might be available to you that you could use in the form for this rolling pin. Very simple. Okay, I have this large enough. I can put an apple in the middle. I'm going to cut the outside a little bit to begin with, and then I'll form it up around my apple and we'll get on with it. We'll start one small apple. Let's take a little pat of butter, put it right in the middle, okay? And take that knife very gently, cut all the way around. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle. That just gets that excess out of our way. Now, very easily, very gently, you have to be light with this. You can't be heavy-handed. All right, it won't work on this dish. Just gently bring that pastry up and over. All right. If you wish to hold this in your hand and work it like that, that works good for me. That's the way I like to do it. If your pastry tears, give it a little pinch. Just fold it over and pinch it. Remember, it's quite pliable, very workable. It's the way we made it. All right, now on that excess, there we go. I'll just remove any excess. When I get down to where I can just barely see the butter in the middle, I'll keep pushing this over and we are there. It doesn't hurt to leave a little opening in the very center there where that butter is. That's going to be a vent. But the rest of this just forms a perfect pie crust over an apple half, and boom, right there is your dumpling. Now folks, don't make it any harder. The next thing, when it comes to putting it in your ramekin, something to keep the bottom from sticking. Okay, a little bit of baking spray there. That's all that is, just baking spray. Put the apple on top of that. And once this is baked, we can then put syrup over this, or I can remove this from the ramekin, set it up on a plate, and do a little more formal setting that way. Either way, it makes for a great side dish or dessert. Now I have these all dished up and ready to hit the oven, and I'm going to be baking those at 400 degrees. Where I'm at, it takes about 25 minutes. Your altitude may take a little bit longer or a little shorter depending on whether you're located higher in the mountains or lower, closer to the sea. So want to watch these. If you start seeing them blow out on the side or something, then that is an indicator that the apple has become soft and it's ready to come out of the oven. Back here, still simmering this down. When I get 1 cup, that is when it is finished. And until then, just let it keep bubbling away, and it will turn into a fantastic syrup for us. It's just a matter of patience. Let's go ahead, get these in our oven. Now, if you've noticed, I've placed mine on a baking sheet. Just makes it easier to handle them, that's all. 400 degrees, about 25 minutes. These are out of my oven. Now right now I'm cooling these down on what they call a pan rack. This is just a cooling rack, or it lifts food up to do different things with. Do this when they're hot if you're going to remove them, because if you wait, the sugars that come out of it and stick on the bottom when they cool are going to seal it in there like glue. Okay, now if you're going to serve it in the ramekin, go ahead and leave it in there. Just center it, okay, while they're still able to move, like so. Center it in there, and that way when you pour your syrup over it and put your other topping on it, it'll look nice and pretty that way. Pull them out this way if you're going to plate them up in a different serving. Another way of doing these is to put these all in a rectangular dish, like a glass pan, cook them together, then put the syrup over them at the end and serve them as a table item for a family. So family style. Now over here on the other side we have that syrup. It's been bubbling away, and well, frankly, we're about down to where we need. I needed a cup. Well, look at that. Looks like about a cup to me. I'm going to turn that burner off and just let it finish cooling. It'll steam off a little bit more, and I have a wonderful apple syrup right here. It's going to be fantastic on those. So I need two things to happen here. I need the syrup to cool a little bit because it is like wickedly hot. I need for those apple dumplings over here to cool down so they can be handled. And I also don't want my apple dumpling to melt my cream topping. Now if you're doing an a la mode, you know, with some ice cream and you want melting, it's cool to do it hot. Otherwise, with a whipped cream, you might want to cool it a little bit so it's warm but not piping hot. My dumplings have had about 30 minutes to cool. Now it's time to do this. I don't mind waiting to do this, and it's not something that you should mind either because this takes very little time. Even if you're doing this by hand, it does not take that long to make whipped cream or whipped cream topping. Very, very simple. And it's as simple as what you see here, that heavy cream. Put it in a mixer, use a whisk on it, and then work in the sugar. Now, at first there will be a bit of a scratching sound if you're using an electric mixer of this type. And that is because the sugar, the granules, are scratching between the whisk and the bottom of the bowl. And that's just in part getting mixed into the liquid. It doesn't take it long. So I give it usually about 2 minutes at this speed, and then I'll speed it up. And it doesn't take it long at that point to give us our nice stiff whipped topping. Now it's important to make sure not to put this bourbon in until this has already been whipped up nice and stiff. Having a spatula handy is a very smart thing when it comes to working with any whipped topping like this. Now I've generated kind of a thick, frothy condition with that cream. I can speed this up and get quick results. Do that first and it'll reduce how much splattering occurs when making this. Now I'm going to drizzle in that bourbon gently. Pick that up to high speed. And there we have it, folks. That's all there is to it. You now have your bourbon cream topping all ready to go. That is beautiful. Oh yeah. The quantity of everything that we use today starts right back here with that apple juice. We started with 1 quart. On the allspice, it was just simply dusted lightly over the apples, simply the way you would do if you were using cinnamon, and you can substitute cinnamon as well. We're also going to be using 1 pat of butter for each half of an apple and a little bit of salt just sprinkled over them, so we don't have distinct measurements here. But on this, our pastry, simple enough, 2 cups of flour, 1/2 of a cup of butter, just 1 stick, folks, 1/3 of a cup of lard, 1 teaspoon of salt, and up to 1/2 of a cup of milk. The topping that we had, wonderful ingredients. That's heavy cream here. We whip that heavy cream up with a little bit of sugar, and that's 1.5 cups of heavy cream to 1/4 of a cup to 1/3 of a cup of sugar, and about 3 tablespoons of bourbon. That is a beautiful bourbon cream. If you don't want to use bourbon, you want to substitute, here it is. Vanilla, 1 teaspoon, okay? That's simple. Folks, those are your ingredient quantities. Let's take a look at this gorgeous dish. So now that this is out, that pastry's quite crumbly. I'm going to make this cut very gently. Open him up, just like so. put his brother right behind him. Right there. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a gorgeous little dumpling. But we need to help it along a little bit, so let's put a syrup over that. Now, simple enough. We're just going to take this by the spoon, and starting in the middle, we're just going to drizzle. See there? Nothing more than that. So if you're looking for that outstanding dessert, that special something that is old-fashioned yet, well, it just stands apart from the rest, well, I've just given it to you right there. That, folks, that's hot apple dumplings. It is surprising that something that is so humble can be done in such a way that it comes across so elegant. This is a beautiful thing. This is also a delicious thing. And if you're really wanting to kind of show off and at the same time have something that is just incredibly delicious, I recommend. Oh man. Tart and sweet just hit head to head in this. That little bit of bourbon cream sets everything off. The pastry, light, flaky, very, very tender. And it is quite the most incredible recipe. Folks, please give this a try. You're really, really going to enjoy this recipe. And I know you're going to like it when you do. Tell me what you think about it down in the comments box after you make it. If you would, also take a look right underneath here. There is a description box. You're going to see that link to my channel. That's Texas Cooking Today. You're also going to see a link to my website. That's where I sell my recipes, aprons. I haven't got the aprons on yet. Got a cap on there. We're going to be doing some pictures. T-shirts are already up. Take a look at what I have there. Some really neat stuff. Thank you very much for watching this. If you would, please subscribe. Click the like button down below. And folks, have you a good day and enjoy that hot apple dumpling. I sure will. Oh yeah.